Hey, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. That time of weekend, everybody's favorite segment here on YouTube, the MLB Power Rankings. I just finished watching the third match of Dodgers Toronto, and I gotta say, I almost had a couple of heart attacks watching Toronto squeak that one out. Yeah, just gonna start this a little bit later than usual. As if you're new here, we do this before the Sunday Nighter, so the Cubs and Cardinals are kicking off their rubber match right now. Other things happening this week, I am going to be doing as usual. We do every year the August playoff prediction, so I'm planning to do the video for that this week on top of the power rankings as usual and the next week's power rankings. We are on our way to a giveaway at 1,700 subs. I am going to be giving away a new hat to one of the subscribers. We're pretty close, and honestly, I think we'll get there this week with that addition of that August playoff prediction video. So if you're not quite that sub yet and you're on the fence, want to get in for that giveaway chance, this is probably gonna only be the easiest chance to do a giveaway because it's only gonna get harder and harder as we keep growing. But guys, we're gonna jump into it. Bottom row, pretty much the same at this point. Not going to be a whole lot to talk about. Second bottom row are teams that are probably out of the playoff race at this point. It's kind of much better than the bottom row. But this middle of the row, I'm going to be honest with you, the middle row is probably the hardest row to figure out this week. Top two rows, of course, are playoff contenders on their way in that playoff seed, and top row, as you know, power rankings. But yeah, we're going to jump it off with number 30. Believe it or not, I had a comment last week that Colorado should not be the worst team on this board. And I think they proved this week that they probably should be there, and they're going to be there for the rest of the year. 0-6 on the week, 0-3 against Toronto, 0-3 against the Diamondbacks over the weekend. Toronto series, they gave up, 46 runs? Or was it 46 difference? And they only scored like 4 themselves. Overall, just been a very, very bad year for Colorado. Not going to get too much into it. Number 29 was the team that the guy argued should possibly be 30. While they have struggled, while they had been bad as of late, I don't think they're quite on the level of Colorado. I do think their future is at least a little bit brighter at this point for next year than Colorado. 1-2 against the Athletics, 2-1 against San Francisco. Just right there alone, 500 on the week, in my opinion, just kind of demonstrates the difference. We did see some winning series for Colorado the past couple of weeks, but I think we're back to their old ways. At number 28, team that was in the bottom all season last year has kind of worked their way up. At times, you see signs that they're not the worst team in the MLB, but I think it's pretty clear that the worst team in the American League at this point. Maybe some teams starting to make some cases for them. They obviously have tried to make some trades, get in there, but the rest of the year is kind of just going to be playing out. 1-5 on the week, picking up their only win over the weekend against Cleveland. Got swept earlier in the week against Seattle, so kind of just the status quo for the White Sox playing out the rest of the season. Number 27, just kind of keeping them in that same spot, even though it wasn't necessarily an awful week 3 and 4 on the week. Splitting the weekend 4-game set with the Cincinnati Reds. Trying to play spoiler. I think at this point there's some teams, the wild card race in the National League is quite heated. They have a chance to spoil a little bit in their division there with the Cincinnati Reds, and they're doing well. Skeens, of course, on his way to that Cy Young, pitched and another gem, keeping that ERA under 2. So that's the one highlight, of course, with Pittsburgh is Skeens. Will they be able to build around him? It's not looking good going forward for sure. Number 26. Baltimore Orioles, while they made some trades at the trade deadline to make them competitive going forward this year, I think is all but over. We know that, and they continue to kind of lose and play some sloppy baseball along the way, losing the series today, the rubber match against the Athletics. Lost by 1 run, had a lead at one point, didn't quite fall through. 1-2 against Philly. So overall, they still play teams very strong. The offense does have times where it shows up. And the highlight of the season so far has been Trevor Rogers is absolutely making a case that maybe Cy Young, but there's so many good pitchers in the American League. I don't think he's going to get overlooked, but I think we need to give him some credit where credit is due. Number 25. Bottom row does stay the same. I think these two are the only that swap Minnesota overall. While they did have a winning week, I'm not going to get too far out of myself. They sold like crazy at the trade deadline. I can't forget about all the weeks leading up to that as well. So Minnesota, 4-2 week, beating both division teams. Kansas City Royals have kind of put a hammer in that team's chances, and we'll get to that in a minute. And Detroit Tigers. So overall, winning week in their division, a little bit surprising. I think most people coming in would think they'd have a losing week with the schedule that they did have. Minnesota comes through. They still have some highlight pieces in their roster, and it showed this week. Number 24. We had some hope for a little bit there. Tampa Bay kind of fallen down to where they probably were expected to be coming into the season. 0-3 against Seattle this weekend, a couple of times where they had the lead in that series. Played it pretty well. Rasmussen had a good game as well. He's had a great year since coming back. But they just fall short. Winning a series earlier in the week as well against the LA Angels. Tampa Bay, at this point, is going to finish fourth in the division, I think, going forward. Orioles might be in a better position overall. At number 23, we have the Athletics. A little bit of a solid week, some offensive times coming forward. Kratz having that rookie of the year, just leading all offensive categories across the board. And they're starting to get some opportunity for their really young pitchers. We're kind of starting to see the depth of what their young talent might be able to bring. I think that is making a big difference, definitely when you're matching up against this bottom row. Winning against Baltimore this week, winning against Washington, both games 2 out of 3. For an overall solid week, and I think they're very solid in the second row with aspirations of moving up this board in the next couple of years for sure. Number 22, stop the bleeding a little bit this week after an ugly start to the week, getting swept by the Milwaukee Brewers. They go in and have a 5-game set with the Miami Marlins, team which looked to be their past them in the division at least this year, maybe not going into next year, but they win 4 out of the 5 there to kind of stop the bleeding of the ugliness of the year. And in my opinion, kind of stop the momentum that the Marlins did have going for them. We'll get to them in a little bit here. Number 21, playing that rubber match today against the Cubs over the weekend. Of course, with the Sunday Nighter, talked about that already. Cardinals 2-1 against the Dodgers. So overall, 3-2 week. Coming in, could go 500 against 2 teams that are in this top row, at least last week. And it's just, I think, too much of a little bit of bleeding over the past month or so has kind of put them in this scenario. When we start looking at the next couple of teams, they have played those teams as well, losing those series. So that's kind of the difference. When you look at 21 to maybe like 15, it's really close. And if you go on like a 6-7 game win streak next week, win the whole week, you're probably going to jump quite up this board. That's just keeping that in mind. Number 20, team that's been floating in this area up and down for the last 2-3 months. 1-2 against Tampa. 1-2 against Detroit. It's overall losing week, losing the team below them, losing the team at the top. It's not like unexpected. Angels kind of come back down to earth. We saw chances at times that they were going to be in that playoff race, in the division race, but I think they're 4 games out of a playoff spot right now with a few teams to hop, and it just seems like with the momentum and the team that they got, they're just like going to fall a little bit short. At number 19, managed to just dominate Colorado this weekend, but that's not going to say much. Most teams do find that opportunity at home as well. In that case, Arizona started the week off 1-2 against San Diego. Traded a lot at the trade deadline. They're kind of giving up their chance of the postseason with San Francisco ahead of them and a lot of other teams in the division. Overall, they still are technically in it. All these teams are in it, but there's just a lot of teams, and you got to start ranking them at one point or another. Number 18, team that just, in my opinion, was in a position that they would be able to really compete for that last wildcard spot. And if they fall short at the end of the season, I think you will look back at this week as being kind of the week where they felt that they just didn't deliver where you would need to deliver to be that playoff team. 1-2 against Boston, and then 1-2 against Minnesota. So Boston's that team that they are competing for that last spot with. You want to find a series win in these, definitely with the only 2 months left in the season. They fall short there. And then to lose a series, I know the rubber match today went to extra innings and they lose, well, on the road. It's a tough loss, but you need to win those series if you're going to be serious. Definitely when you're a few games behind the rest of them, you got to find ways to make it up, and that's where you're supposed to make it up, and they just fell short. Number 17, they had moved their way up to a pretty competitive spot on this board, above 500, but they fell back below it. Maybe they'll get back into the sniff of it this week, but 2-6 overall on the week with a 5-game set. We talked about it with Atlanta, 1-4 there. Not exactly what you wanted to see if you were going to find your way to be above 500. Maybe at times it looked like maybe they were sniffing, potentially getting in the playoff race. Of course, it's not out of it, the question yet, but this week really dampened the chances of that happening. 1-2 against Houston, a series that playing against a tough playoff World Series kind of team. Would have loved to see them step up to that as well. They had been one of the hottest teams over the past month and a half, so we'll see how they bounce back after a rough week this week going forward. Number 16. While they've struggled over the past few weeks, it's not time for me to move them any lower than this on the board. 2-1 against Pittsburgh, 1-2 against Washington. So a 500 a week against the bottom row team isn't exactly how you get yourself back in the playoff race. San Francisco's been slowly but surely falling further and further out. And keep putting up these 500 weeks or less, and you're going to find yourself in the second bottom row. So San Francisco is walking a fine line at this point, and I think they're holding on to this spot. Number 15. Getting back in the hunt. People talked about them being sellers at the trade deadline, of course, with Bieber being shipped out. But overall, they didn't really change the roster that had been getting them to where they are at this point. They are one of the strongest teams over the past couple of weeks, picking up some more solid wins, sweeping the Mets to start the week, 2-1 against the White Sox, so picking up a big series win against a bottom team. 5-1 on the week, staying in the hunt. I think they're only 3 games back. They're only a couple games back of the Yankees who've fallen out of that spot. So interestingly enough, the Guardians continue to maintain it. I think it is working in their advantage that their division might be weaker. It's arguable at this point. Every division seems to have a couple of weak teams. But the Guardians are sniffing it, and they're right there smack dab in the middle, which is funny. Number 14. Hard to keep them up. And they've been like up, down, and they never quite break into this top 2 rows. And it's because they just can't deliver in the division. Talk about it all the time against the Reds. They did go 4-3 this week, all against their division, but 2-2 against Pittsburgh is not what you wanted to do to really show that you are taking that step forward that I was talking about. The Reds maintain the pace, but right now it's not going to be good enough, and I don't know if they can keep it up when they start playing some of these top-tier teams in the league. Number 13. Falling out of the top 2 rows, the Yankees have another rough weekend. A series loss to Houston over the weekend in ugly fashion across the board. Fried gets beat up today. The team gets beat up today. The bullpen has not been delivering. Devin Williams just been a disaster for them. They managed to squeak out a win yesterday. In the 9th or 8th, there was a 1-run win, but overall the Yankees are bleeding and it just continues to happen. 1-2 against Houston, 1-2 against Texas. Both teams that are ahead of them in this playoff race, looking like maybe Texas standings wise isn't, but they are at least closing it at a fast fashion. Number 12, those Texas Rangers winning that series made the difference for me, and it puts them into the top 2 rows, playing good, and the pitching is continuing to be there. But this weekend, 0-3 against Philly, and we saw times where they had leads and the pitching has kept them in it, but the offense just isn't scoring enough runs, and that very well could be what comes down to it at the end of this, whether they miss the playoffs or not, get into the playoffs. The offense just isn't there. Getting in the playoffs is one thing, but when you start playing the top tier talent in the pitching department, you're not going to go very far in the playoffs with this roster the way they are playing. But at the same time, they're in it, and they got to give them a little bit of credit for battling from the second bottom row all season long to kind of be back in it. Number 11, one of the biggest fallers on the board over the past few weeks. 7 losses in a row now. 0-3 against Milwaukee, 0-3 against Cleveland. And now just giving up a big gap in this National League East as it goes to show. The New York Mets kind of turned into the Mets that we are used to seeing happen, and it's kind of starting to be a little bit scary on whether or not they are going to be able to hold off the charging teams. It doesn't seem like it. Maybe they are, but they need to sort this out. 7-game losing streak. Both New York teams are definitely looking for some change. At number 10, Boston Red Sox kind of maintain their quo. They were the hottest team coming into this week. They started off the week pretty good, winning the first 2, and then lost the last match, avoiding getting the sweep against the Royals. And then they win against San Diego and then lose the next 2. So overall, a 500 week against 2 teams that are right there in the wild card kind of race, a playoff kind of race that you would like to see. But the pitching has been there. The offense has shown signs, but so just a little bit of a status quo, not falling, not moving up for the Boston Red Sox. Number 9, in the Houston Astros, who kind of got their way back into the race, winning the division, still tight, but I don't know if they're going to be holding on to it. But they are very much on their way to the postseason the way they are playing. 2-1 against Miami, 2-1 against the New York Yankees. Overall, 4-2 week. getting back to their winning ways after a couple of weeks of struggling. But overall, we got to give them credit where credit is due. The American League, they're in one of the top tier teams here, of course, and they are continuing to fight. Number 8, getting right back in the thick of things. Padres are working their way back up, hoping to get a sniff back in that top row. 2-1 against Arizona, 2-1 against Boston. Winning again, making additions. We got some fun things coming out of the Padres. A big series coming up this week against the LA Dodgers to really demonstrate if they're going to get back in that playoff race for the division. Can they win the division? It's very much possible at this point. They have closed the gap significantly over the past couple of weeks. Number 7, Detroit Tigers. I don't think if they had built such a massive lead in this division, it's got cut in half, I think, at this point. But Detroit still very much on their way. 2-1 against the Angels, 1-2 against Minnesota, 500 against 2 lower teams. Detroit's kind of been iffy, kind of coasting for the past month and a half. But I think it's expected at this point the playoffs are there. But the one thing up for grabs now is whether or not they're going to get that first round bye. Does it make a difference with Skubal? Of course it does, but they're still going to be pretty much a lock to make the postseason. At number 6, talked about it at the beginning of this, but they avoided the sweep against the Dodgers with some crazy, 14 walks they gave up today and win by 1 run, bases loaded at the end of the game. And they set franchise records against Colorado Rockies earlier in the week, putting up 46 run differential, 20 runs one game, 10 another, 15 another, something like that. Overall, the offense has been there. Bieber's coming, and he's probably a week and a half away. They're going to go to the 6-man rotation. Not sure how that's going to work out for them, but they still feel a little bit smoke and mirrors at this point, but I got to give them credit where it's due. Number 5. Right now, I do have Seattle being as the top power ranked team in the American League, and I think they earned it with the way they played this weekend against Tampa Bay, sweeping that series, winning earlier in the week 3-0 against the White Sox as well. 6 games in a row this week. I don't know what it was like last week as well, so could be even more for them. But the pitching rotation, I think, is the strongest 1 through 5 in the American League. They made additions to this lineup with Naylor, with Suarez, that are going to be impactful going in the postseason. I expect them at this point with the team that they got over Houston to win the division. And I probably think they're going to get a bye, which is going to set them up pretty well going forward. Of course, I'm kind of giving some hints on what my playoff prediction video for the August is coming forward. But there you have it. I think Seattle leading the way in the American League, maybe starting to make some competitive waves into the National League, as I've talked about the past few power rankings in a row. The National League, I kind of give the edge. The top tier teams seem to be just a little bit ahead of the National League or the American League, and it does kind of demonstrate. At number 4, dropping a few spots. The gap in the division is falling. 1-2 against Cincinnati, 1-1 against the Cardinals, playing the rubber match right now. Cubs on their way to the postseason, and it's been a great year for them offensively. It's kind of sputtered out with Pete Armstrong kind of falling a little bit from his MVP kind of caliber that we saw in the beginning of the year. The rotation's been delivered. They made some additions at the trade deadline to hopefully squeeze their way in there and continue to be competitive. 4th, it's no slight at them whatsoever. I think they've had a great year. I think the problem that division is we'll get to that in a minute. Number 3, getting back in the top 3, the Dodgers just looked super good this weekend overall against Toronto, winning the series. Probably should have found the sweep at one way or another. Rotation, we saw Glasnow. Snell looks to be back, and those were kind of the issues I've been pointing out week after week when it came to the Dodgers, is that their rotation's a little iffy, but now that they're starting to get healthy, they're starting to look lethal. They, I think, addressed a little bit of the issues at the bottom of their lineup as well. I think going forward, they are very much that World Series contender that we expected. At number 2, you know, the Philadelphia Phillies just playing very good baseball as of late. 2-1 against Baltimore, 3-0 against Texas, playing solid against Texas, pitching really coming out of the rotation, probably one of the top 5 in the league as well. That's, I think, what you're starting to see with some of these teams in the top row here is that they have 1 through 5 pretty solid pitching all around, and I think that's going to make a big difference, of course, when it comes to the postseason time. Philadelphia made that gap in the division even bigger as well. I think they're on their way to get that. Whether or not they get the bye might not be the National League East. It seems like Milwaukee, who is at number 1, is on their way to get that bye. So one of these two teams is going to get the other bye, in my opinion. Maybe San Diego gets up there, maybe something like that. But guys, at number 1, got to give credit. Won 9 in a row now for Milwaukee. Seems like every month we're talking about Milwaukee going on a massive win streak. 2 crazy come from behind wins against the Mets this weekend to sweep them. Swept Atlanta earlier in the week. Continue to play the best baseball across the majors, and it doesn't seem like it's really even that close. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know what would you change on this board and why. And don't forget to subscribe for the giveaway, and we will see you for that next video.